my bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? How?
I'm all right with it, but like I said, remember, let them know that I know that the cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up. And let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer. I know they did, because I was no professional serial killer or anything, murderer or whatever you want to call it, you know. I wasn't professional at what I was doing.
Eileen,
I did some sloppy work, you know.
For some reason, I've become fascinated by serial killers lately, and I suppose the general public has too, because you see in TV shows and documentaries everywhere talking about serial killers, which kind of disturbs me a little bit. But, you know, the more I got to thinking of it, the more I kind of see that it's a lot like watching monster movies, except in this case, the monsters are all too real. Anyway, I've been reading some books about the topic, and you'd be surprised to hear that just about everything you've heard about this phenomenon is absolute bullshit. So, I'm going to talk about the myth of the serial killer. The FBI created the concept of a serial killer profile, yet it seems it was created to misinform the public, since if the FBI releases too much accurate information about serial killers, it could incite widespread fear or panic. They may want to hide the true extent of the problem. And you know, after having learned a little bit about these guys, I'm not so sure I wouldn't lie too, or at least withhold. You know, withholding information isn't exactly a lie. Isn't a lie at all. So, I don't know, because there's a whole lot more of these guys lurking around under the baseboards than you'd think. But anyway, remember, this is the same FBI which gave us a long litany of fake charges brought against people. You know, the Whitmer kidnapping and all this stuff. These guys think nothing. They have no compunctions at all about lying to you. And in this case, the more you read about it and the more dispassionate the information you absorb, the more you start to realize that this is a real problem that no one knows of.
Democrats as Norwood Park committeeman. A visit with Rosalind Carter, the First Lady during the Carter administration. Gacy right here is hiding the fact that there are bodies buried under his house. He's the great deceiver.
I always felt that service to community and community service to others, you know, in my religious background, I felt if you serve other people, it'll come back to serve you.
I first became interested in this phenomenon when, after having watched this documentary called The Killing Season on Amazon, I believe, possibly Netflix. And in this documentary, these reporters, they began investigating some bodies that were found on the East Coast, just south of New Jersey and South Atlantic City, and come to find out that they were placed there by multiple killers independently of one another. So they began to investigate each one of these killings, and it branched out. It peregrinated out into the discovery that these guys are everywhere. They're everywhere. The FBI says there's 25 to 30 serial killers roaming around at any one given time. But, man, it's a lot more than that. So anyway, I discovered this guy, Thomas Hargrove, of the Murder Accountability Project. He was researching a story on prostitution. He came across some unrelated federal data on murders, including the age, sex, and race of every victim, the weapon used in the crime, and more. This unexpected windfall of raw numbers piqued his curiosity. I wondered if it would be possible to teach a computer to spot victims of serial murder. He tells A&E True Crime, after bugging his bosses for 6 years, he finally got the go-ahead to develop a mathematical program to detect murder patterns around the country. Hargrove suggests that around 2,000 serial killers might be at large in the United States. And the estimate comes from the algorithm he created. That's a lot of killing going on, folks. And I think if most people really realize that, nobody'd ever go out of their house. You know, all the restaurants might close down and the movie theaters and, you know, golly, that's an awful lot of people.
Numerous murders of women in my life over a span of 50 years.
Tell me about North Little Rock. Tell me what that girl looked like.
They had buck teeth. He had a gap between the teeth, that's what it was.
Little grows disturbingly animated as he describes how he strangled his victims.
You know, she fighting for her life, you know, fighting for my pleasure.
Yeah.
Little skinny black girl, real friendly. She was laughing while I was killing them.
Okay, myth 1. Serial killers are lone predators. Maybe I should have called this myth 2 because the first one I just told you on the last panel that there were only 25 to 30 serial killers operating in the United States currently, and I think I just showed how that's probably a myth. But anyway, I'll just say myth 1. Henry Lee Lucas worked with as many as 3 accomplices and, according to him, belonged to a cult called the Hand of Death. The Ripper Crew in Chicago was part of a satanic cult which killed at least 17 women. The son of Sam, David Berkowitz, belonged to a satanic cult, and there's a documentary on, I believe it's Netflix, called The Sons of Sam. And if you'll watch that, you'll clearly see he belonged to a larger group. The Hillside Strangler worked with another guy, his cousin. The Sunset Strip Killer, along with Roy Norris and Lawrence Bittaker, those were multiple perps. And Charles Ng and Leonard Lake were a pair as well. The evidence indicates that the Night Stalker and Herb Mullins killings involve multiple perpetrators. Night Stalker, that's, I think, Richard Ramirez. And, yeah, that does. Indeed, according to Dave McGowan, evidence almost always indicates multiple perpetrators with very few exceptions. And, of course, let's not forget Charlie Manson, who worked in a cult. Actually, he ran a cult. But anyway, that's the first myth, because they're not lone predators. There's a book called Programmed to Kill by David McGowan that really goes in depth in researching this topic, and I'd heartily recommend that anyone who can to buy it. It's on Amazon. It's about $15. If you're really interested in the subject, that's the book to read, because it gives you a very broad overview, and it shows how the phenomenon of serial killers, organized pedophile rings, and satanic cults are all kind of intertwined. They amalgamate, and there's very little overlap, or there's very little delineation between the two. They overlap. But at any rate, the second myth is that serial killers target a particular type of victim. And that's not true. Serial killers choose victims from all races, sex, and walks of life. The third myth is that serial killers follow a regular MO. And that's not true either. Serial killers choose all manner of implements, location, and circumstances, usually weapons of opportunity that are found on site. And myth 4, most serial killers are white men. This is one this is where he goes, McGowan, he calls it the politics of serial murder. And see, once again, trying to blame white men is a political act. But at any rate, if you exclude organized criminals, if you exclude hitmen and gangsters and what have you, 30% of serial killers are white men. Only 30%, and 55% are black. Once you exclude organized crime, 30% of serial killers are white men, and 55% are black. But anyway, take heed. Be forewarned, because if you start to get red-pilled on this topic, it'll suck you down a rabbit hole, and you won't be able to turn your eyes away. you'll just keep following the white rabbit, and you'll just go deeper and deeper in the hole, and it can consume you. You can become obsessed with this kind of stuff, and it'll take you to some really dark places.
Do you understand the charge of murder? Do you understand the law pertaining to murder?
And then one last thing, I thought I'd go ahead and show you the statistics on the racial demographics of serial killers. And if you'll look here, I've highlighted the last 24 years. And there the numbers are 30% white and in the mid-50s black. If you look, though, before 1990, though, it was mostly white men before that, from 1990 back to 1900. And, you know, if you took all the numbers going back to 1900, then I guess you could say it is true, 50% are white men. But like I say, if you look at the last 25 years, you'll see very clearly that it's only 30% compared to about 55% for black people. So I just thought I'd throw that in and show you. So much of statistical analysis depends on the numbers you put in, because that determines the numbers you get out.
I can't sleep 'cause my bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Psycho killer.